A shadow falls across a man's face as he stares at the photograph in his trembling hands. "I promised you justice," he whispers, his voice breaking. "And today, after 15 years, I keep that promise." He tucks the photo away, checks his weapon, and steps into the rain. What happens in the next 24 hours will change everything. For him, for his enemies, and for a city that forgot the meaning of justice. Asterisk. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more immersive storytelling experiences. Your support helps us create more content like this. The rain fell in sheets across London's East End, washing away the day's grime, but never its sins. Michael Harrow pulled his coat tighter as he navigated the narrow streets he'd once called home. 15 years away had changed everything and nothing. The buildings were different, gentrification's steady march, but the shadows remained familiar, as did the weight of memory pressing down on his shoulders. He paused outside the Broken Crown, a pub that had somehow survived the neighborhood's transformation. Through the foggy windows, he could see patrons laughing, drinking, living their ordinary lives. Michael envied them their simplicity. He checked his watch. 8:42 p.m. His contact was late. The doors swung open, releasing a burst of warmth and noise into the cold night. A woman stepped out, her eyes scanning the street until they found him. Recognition flickered across her face, followed quickly by something else. Fear? Regret? She approached cautiously. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said. "Hello, Sarah." Michael's voice was rougher than he remembered. 15 years is a long time. Sarah Collins had aged well, the lines around her eyes only adding character to a face he'd once known better than his own. She'd been 22 when he was sentenced, a rookie detective who believed in the system. Now her eyes held the weariness of someone who'd seen too much of that system's failures. "You look different," she said. "Prison does that." He didn't mean it to sound bitter, but some wounds never fully heal. She glanced nervously over her shoulder. "We shouldn't talk here. I have what you asked for." She handed him a thick manila envelope. Everything I could find on Blackwood and his operation. Current addresses, business holdings, security details. Michael took the envelope, feeling its weight. The weight of possibility, of answers, of revenge. "Why are you helping me, Sarah?" "You know what I'm planning." Her eyes met his, unwavering now. "Because I was wrong 15 years ago. We all were. And because some debts can't be paid through proper channels." The rain intensified, drumming against the pavement like impatient fingers. "What happened to you, Michael?" "In there." He looked away. "I survived." "And Emma?" "Have you?" "No." He cut her off. "Not yet. One thing at a time." Sarah nodded, understanding. "Be careful. Blackwood isn't the small-time gangster he was when you went away. He's connected now. Powerful." "So am I," Michael replied, "just in different ways." She touched his arm briefly. "The man I knew wouldn't have wanted this. The man you knew died in that courtroom." He stepped back. "Thank you for this. Now forget you saw me." As Sarah walked away, disappearing into the rain-soaked night, Michael opened the envelope and began to read. Tomorrow, Richard Blackwood would learn that some ghosts don't stay buried, and some debts demand payment in blood. The luxury penthouse overlooking the Thames housed a man who had reinvented himself. Richard Blackwood, once a street thug with ambition, now styled himself as a legitimate businessman. His walls displayed expensive art. His liquor cabinet held bottles worth more than most people earned in a month. He'd built an empire on other people's misery and called it success. He was entertaining guests, politicians, celebrities, the kind of people who didn't ask questions about where money came from as long as it flowed freely. His laugh boomed across the room as he clapped a member of parliament on the shoulder. "Richard," his assistant interrupted, "there's a security issue downstairs." Blackwood's smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. "Excuse me, gentlemen." He followed his assistant to a private room where security footage showed the lobby. "What am I looking at?" "This man entered 10 minutes ago. He asked for you by name." Blackwood leaned closer to the screen, studying the figure. Something about the man's posture triggered a distant memory. Run facial recognition. Moments later, his assistant's tablet pinged. "Michael Harrow." Released from Belmarsh Prison 3 weeks ago. Served 15 years for. I know what he served for. Blackwood snapped, a rare crack in his polished veneer. He stared at the screen, at the ghost from his past, standing calmly in his lobby. I want him gone. Now. Sir, he says he has information about the Canary Wharf project. Says it's worth millions to you. Blackwood's jaw tightened. The Canary Wharf development was his crowning achievement, the final step in his transformation from criminal to respected developer. If there was a problem, send him up. Search him thoroughly. When Michael entered the penthouse, he'd been relieved of his coat, phone, and dignity by Blackwood's security team. He stood in the center of the room, seemingly unimpressed by the luxury surrounding him. Michael Harrow, Blackwood said, circling him like a predator. You've got some nerve coming here. Hello, Richard. Nice place. Crime pays better than I remembered. Blackwood's laugh was hollow. Still bitter, I see. 15 years, and you haven't learned a thing. He poured himself a drink, deliberately not offering one to Michael. My guests think you're a potential investor having second thoughts. Let's keep this brief. What's this about Canary Wharf? Michael's eyes never left Blackwood's face. Elite. This isn't about Canary Wharf. Then what is it about? Katherine. The name hung in the air between them. Blackwood's hand tightened around his glass. Get him out of here, he ordered his security. Before they drag me away, Michael said calmly. You should know I've sent evidence packages to 6 different news outlets. Everything I have on Katherine's murder. Everything that proves you ordered it. Everything that proves you framed me. Blackwood's face drained of color. You're bluffing. Am I? The packages are set to be opened tomorrow morning unless I make a call tonight. So you can have your men throw me out, maybe even kill me, but by this time tomorrow, everyone will know what you did. The security guards looked to Blackwood for direction. He waved them away with a trembling hand. Leave us. When they were alone, Blackwood's composure crumbled. What do you want? The truth. Then justice. Truth. Blackwood laughed bitterly. You want the truth? Katherine was going to ruin everything. She found my ledgers, threatened to go to the police. What was I supposed to do? Not kill my wife, Michael said, his voice dangerously quiet. It wasn't personal. It was business. It was personal to me. Michael stepped closer. And framing me? Was that business too? Blackwood shrugged. You were convenient. The jealous husband. The police believed it because they wanted to. Simple. Except Katherine wasn't having an affair. That was a lie you created. Details. Blackwood regained some of his confidence. Look, what's done is done. What do you really want? Money? I can make you rich. You can start over somewhere new. Michael shook his head. I don't want your money. Then what? I told you. Justice. Blackwood's laugh was ugly. Justice? There's no such thing. There's only power, and those too weak to seize it. You're wrong, Michael said, and I'm going to prove it. The story of Michael and Katherine had begun 20 years earlier, in a London very different from the one Michael had returned to. They'd met at university, he studying engineering, she pursuing law. They were from different worlds, Michael from the working-class East End, Katherine from privilege, but they'd found in each other something worth fighting for. After graduation, Michael had started a small construction company, while Katherine joined a prestigious law firm. They'd built a life together, brick by brick, dream by dream. Then Katherine had been assigned to review some property acquisitions for a new client, Richard Blackwood. She discovered discrepancies, signs that Blackwood was laundering money through his real estate deals. Properties purchased from owners who'd been intimidated into selling. Competitors who suffered mysterious accidents. Katherine had been meticulous, gathering evidence, building a case. You should have seen her, Michael told Sarah as they sat in her small apartment the night after his confrontation with Blackwood. She was fearless. So it was her duty. Sarah nodded. I remember. She came to the station, but no one would listen. Blackwood already had half the department in his pocket. She wouldn't give up, Michael continued, his voice thick with memory. That last night, she said she'd found something big, something that would bring him down for good. He stared in his coffee cup. I should have been there. I was working late on a project in Manchester. If I'd been home, you'd be dead too, Sarah said gently. Blackwood's men were thorough. The official story had been simple. Katherine Harrow, murdered by her husband in a jealous rage after discovering her affair with her client, Richard Blackwood. The evidence had been overwhelming. Michael's fingerprints on the murder weapon, witnesses who claimed to have seen them arguing, even emails suggesting Katherine had been planning to leave him. All fabricated. All believed. "What happened after you confronted him last night?" Sarah asked. "He offered me money to disappear. And I told him I'd think about it. Asked for 24 hours. Michael checked his watch, which gives us until tonight to put the real plan in motion." Sarah leaned forward. "What real plan?" "The evidence packages I mentioned to Blackwood? They exist, but they don't contain what he thinks. They're insurance, in case something happens to me." "Then what's the actual plan?" Michael pulled out his phone and showed her a recording. His conversation with Blackwood, the confession. "This isn't enough," Sarah said. "A coerced confession, obtained illegally. No court would accept it. It's not for the courts. It's for leverage." Michael's eyes were determined. "Tonight, Blackwood is hosting a charity gala. All of London's elite will be there. The perfect audience for the truth." Sarah's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "Michael, whatever you're planning, I need your help, Sarah. One last time." She studied him, searching for something in his face. "The man I knew wouldn't want revenge. He'd want justice. Sometimes they're the same thing." The Blackwood Foundation Charity Gala transformed the Victoria and Albert Museum into a showcase of wealth and influence. Under the soaring ceilings of the medieval Renaissance galleries, London's powerful mingled, champagne flutes in hand, congratulating themselves on their generosity while Richard Blackwood played the gracious host. Michael watched from the shadows of a service entrance, dressed in the uniform of the catering staff. Sarah had helped him secure the position through an old contact. From his vantage point, he could see Blackwood working the room, shaking hands with a cabinet minister, laughing with a famous actress. In position, Sarah's voice came through his earpiece. She was outside in a van, monitoring the security feeds she'd hacked into. "How much time until the presentation?" Michael asked quietly. 20 minutes. Blackwood is scheduled to give his speech, then present the foundation's annual awards. "Perfect." Michael moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, just another server offering canapes and collecting empty glasses. He made his way toward the technical booth where the evening's audiovisual presentation was being controlled. The technician barely glanced up when Michael entered. "You're not supposed to be in here." Michael placed a glass of champagne beside him. "Mr. Blackwood sent this. Said you deserved it for making him look good." The technician smiled. "That's decent of him. He also asked me to give you this." Michael handed him an envelope. Said it's an extra bonus, but you should count it now. As the technician eagerly opened the envelope, Michael moved behind him and pressed a pressure point on his neck. The man slumped forward, unconscious but unharmed. "I'm in," Michael told Sarah. "Uploading now." He inserted a USB drive into the computer and quickly replaced Blackwood's carefully crafted presentation with his own version. "Security is doing a sweep," Sarah warned. "You need to move." Michael slipped out of the booth just as two guards rounded the corner. He nodded respectfully and continued on his way, just another invisible worker. The lights dimmed, signaling the start of the formal program. A spotlight illuminated the small stage where Richard Blackwood stepped up to thunderous applause. "Distinguished guests, friends, colleagues," Blackwood began, his voice smooth with practiced charm. "Tonight, we celebrate not just the Foundation's work, but the power of transformation." As he spoke, Michael positioned himself near an emergency exit. His heart pounded in his chest, but his hands were steady. 15 years of waiting, of planning, had led to this moment. And now, I'd like to share with you a brief presentation about our achievements this year, Blackwood continued, gesturing toward the large screen behind him. The lights dimmed further. The screen flickered to life. But instead of the polished corporate video Blackwood expected, his own face appeared, his conversation with Michael from the previous night. Katherine was going to ruin everything. She found my ledgers, threatened to go to the police. What was I supposed to do? Not kill my wife. It wasn't personal. It was business. The room fell silent. Blackwood froze on stage, his mouth open in shock. "You were convenient. The jealous husband. The police believed it because they wanted to. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Phones came out, recording the unfolding disaster. Blackwood lunged for the microphone. This is a fabrication. Security. But the video continued, damning in its simplicity. Years of carefully constructed respectability crumbled in seconds. Michael watched as chaos erupted. Guests began to leave. Reporters who'd come to cover a charity event suddenly found themselves with a much bigger story. Security guards rushed toward the technical booth. "Time to go," Sarah said in his ear. Michael slipped through the emergency exit as alarms began to sound. Outside, Sarah waited in the van. "It's done," he said as he climbed in. She handed him a tablet showing live news feeds. The story was already breaking. #BlackwoodExposed was trending. "What now?" she asked. Michael looked out at the London skyline, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders for the first time in 15 years. "Now we go to the police with everything we have. The recording, the financial records Katherine found, everything. With this much public attention, they can't ignore it. And after that," he thought of the other reason he'd returned to London, the question he hadn't allowed himself to focus on until Blackwood was dealt with. "I'll find my daughter." Emma Harrow had been 5 years old when her mother was murdered and her father imprisoned. The court had placed her with Katherine's sister, Claire, who had taken the child and disappeared from London, changing their names to escape the scandal. For 15 years, Michael had received no word of his daughter. His letters had gone unanswered. His requests for information had been denied. It was as if Emma had ceased to exist. But Sarah had found her. "Emma Wilson," Sarah said, showing Michael a photograph of a young woman with Katherine's eyes and his stubborn chin. 20 years old, student at Edinburgh University. Her aunt changed both their names to Wilson, her mother's maiden name. Michael stared at the image, trying to reconcile this poised young woman with the little girl who'd once ridden on his shoulders. "Does she know about me?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "But her aunt certainly does." Claire's been following the Blackwood story obsessively since it broke 3 days ago. The aftermath of the gala had been swift and merciless. Richard Blackwood had been arrested attempting to board a private jet to Monaco. Several police officers implicated in the cover-up had been suspended. Michael's case was being reviewed by the Crown Prosecution Service, with a formal exoneration expected. Justice after 15 years. But it felt hollow without Emma. "I need to see her," Michael said. "Are you sure that's wise? She's built a life without you. Finding out everything she believed was a lie. It could be devastating. She deserves the truth. What she does with it is her choice." The train to Edinburgh seemed to crawl through the countryside. Michael sat by the window, watching England give way to Scotland, rehearsing what he would say, then abandoning the words as inadequate. How do you explain 15 years of absence to a daughter who might not even remember you? Edinburgh welcomed him with gray skies and a biting wind. The university campus sprawled before him, ancient buildings standing shoulder to shoulder with modern additions. Students hurried between classes, wrapped in scarves and heavy coats, their lives untouched by the kind of darkness that had shaped his. According to Sarah's information, Emma had a literature seminar in the humanities building at 2 o'clock. Michael found a bench with a view of the entrance and waited, his heart hammering against his ribs. When she appeared, he almost didn't recognize her. The photograph hadn't captured her movement, the way she gestured animatedly as she spoke with a friend, the slight tilt of her head that was so like Katherine's it made his chest ache. He stood, then sat again, courage failing him. What right did he have to disrupt her life? She looked happy, normal. The last time she'd seen him, he'd been led away in handcuffs, branded a murderer. As if sensing his gaze, Emma glanced in his direction. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance. A flicker of something, confusion, perhaps recognition, crossed her face. Then her friend said something, and she turned away, continuing down the path. Michael exhaled shakily. Not today. He wasn't ready, and neither was she. He returned to his hotel and called Sarah. I couldn't do it, he admitted. I saw her, but I couldn't approach her. Maybe that's for the best, Sarah said gently. Give yourself time. Give her time. Time is all I've had for 15 years. He stared out the window at the Edinburgh skyline. I need to do this right. The next morning, he wrote a letter. Not an explanation or an apology. Those would come later, if she wanted them, but an introduction. He told her who he was, that he had been exonerated, that he would like to meet her if she was willing. He included his phone number and the name of his hotel. Then he walked to the university's administration building and arranged for the letter to be delivered to her. 2 days passed with no response. Michael extended his hotel stay, wandered the streets of Edinburgh, and waited. On the third day, his phone rang, an unknown number. "Hello." His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Silence, then. "Is this Michael Harrow?" The voice was unfamiliar, a woman's but not Emma's. "Older." "Yes." "Who's this?" "Claire Wilson, Emma's aunt." The coldness in her tone was unmistakable. "Stay away from her." Michael closed his eyes. "I just want to talk to her." "She doesn't want to talk to you. She's known the truth for years, that her mother was murdered and her father went to prison for it. I protected her from the details, from the pain of it all. And now you want to drag it all up again." "I didn't kill Katherine. The evidence." "I know," Claire interrupted. "I've seen the news. But that doesn't change the fact that Emma has built a life without you. She's happy, stable. Why can't you leave it at that?" "Because she's my daughter." "No." Claire's voice hardened. "She was your daughter. Now she's a young woman who doesn't need her world turned upside down by a stranger with a tragic past." The line went dead. Michael stared at the phone, feeling the familiar weight of loss settle over him again. He was preparing to check out of the hotel the next morning when there was a knock at his door. He opened it to find a young woman standing in the hallway, her hands shoved deep in the pockets of her coat, her expression a mixture of defiance and uncertainty. "Emma," he breathed. She didn't smile. "My aunt told me not to come." "I'm glad you did." They stood in awkward silence until Michael stepped back. "Would you like to come in? Or we could go somewhere else. A cafe, maybe?" "Here is fine." She entered cautiously, surveying the room as if it might tell her something about the man who occupied it. "Aunt Claire is furious. She thinks you're going to ruin everything." "And what do you think?" Emma met his gaze directly. "I think it's too late to worry about that. Everything's already ruined, isn't it? Has been since I was 5. The bluntness of her assessment startled him. "I suppose that's one way to look at it." "How would you look at it?" Michael considered his answer carefully. "I'd say everything was put on hold, frozen in time. And now there's a chance, a small one, to thaw it out and see what's still alive underneath." She studied him, looking for traces of herself or her mother in his features. "I remember you, you know. Not much, but bits and pieces. You used to read to me every night, the same book over and over." "The Little Prince," Michael said softly. "You knew it by heart." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "I still have it. Aunt Claire wanted to throw out everything from before. But I hid that book." Hope flickered in Michael's chest. "Emma, I know this is overwhelming. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know that I'm here and that everything they said about me wasn't true." "I know that now." She hesitated. "The man who really killed my mother, he's going to prison?" "Yes, for a very long time." She nodded, processing this. "Good." Then, after a moment, "What happens now?" "That's up to you. We could talk, get to know each other again. Or if that's too much, I understand." Emma looked out the window, considering. "I have questions. A lot of them. I'll answer everything I can. And I'm angry," she added. "Not just at you, but at everything. The system that failed us. The years we lost. You have every right to be." She turned back to him. "I don't know if I want a father. I've managed without one for 15 years. The word stung, but Michael nodded. "I understand. But," she continued, "I think I'd like to know the man my mother loved. The man who finally brought her killer to justice. It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation. Not yet. But it was a beginning." 6 months later, London welcomed spring with cautious optimism, much like Michael approached his new life. His exoneration had been formalized. The government had offered compensation for his wrongful imprisonment, money he mostly put into a trust for Emma's future. He'd found a small flat in Notting Hill and started a consulting business, using his engineering background to advise on construction projects. His relationship with Emma progressed in careful steps. Weekly phone calls, occasional visits. She remained in Edinburgh, finishing her degree, but had agreed to spend part of the summer with him in London. They were building something new, not trying to recapture what had been lost, but creating something that acknowledged the past while looking toward the future. Sarah had become a constant in his life as well. Their shared history and her unwavering support during his quest for justice had forged a bond that surprised them both. They moved slowly, both carrying scars from the past, but finding comfort in each other's understanding. Richard Blackwood's empire had crumbled spectacularly. His assets frozen, his reputation destroyed. He awaited trial on multiple charges including murder, conspiracy, fraud, and money laundering. Several of his former associates had turned state's evidence, eager to reduce their own sentences by providing information. On a warm Saturday in May, Michael visited Katherine's grave for the first time since his release. He brought white roses, her favorite, and spent an hour telling her about Emma, about the woman their daughter had become despite everything. "She has your determination," he said to the silent stone. "And your laugh. I heard it last week when we were having dinner. It was like hearing you again." As he spoke, he felt a presence behind him. Turning, he saw Emma standing a few feet away, watching him with an unreadable expression. "I didn't know you were coming today," he said, surprised. "I wasn't planning to." She approached slowly. "But I realized I've never been here. Not since the funeral, and I don't remember that." Michael stepped back, giving her space. Emma knelt and placed her own flowers, wildflowers she'd picked along the way, beside his roses. "What was she like?" Emma asked. "Really like, not just the stories Aunt Claire told me." Michael sat beside her on the grass. "She was brilliant, fierce when she needed to be, but gentle too. She loved puzzles, crosswords, logic problems, mysteries. So they kept her mind sharp for her legal work." He smiled at the memory. "She sang in the shower, terribly. Couldn't carry a tune to save her life, but that never stopped her." Emma listened intently, soaking up these details of the mother she'd lost. "And she loved you." "Yes," Michael said simply. "And she adored you. You were her world." They sat in companionable silence, the spring breeze rustling the trees overhead. "I've been thinking," Emma said finally, "about forgiveness." Michael waited, not daring to hope. "Not just forgiving you," she continued, "but forgiving myself for the anger I've carried. Forgiving the system that failed us. Even, somehow, finding a way to forgive the man who took her from us. That's a lot to ask of yourself." She nodded. "I know, but I'm tired of letting the past dictate my future. Mom wouldn't have wanted that for me. For us." Michael felt tears prick his eyes. "No, she wouldn't have." Emma reached out hesitantly and took his hand. It was the first time she'd initiated physical contact since they'd reunited. "I'm not saying it will be easy or quick, but I think I'd like to try being a family again. Whatever that means for us now." The words were a balm to wounds Michael had carried for 15 years. Not a complete healing. That would take time, but a beginning. "I like that too," he said. As they walked away from the cemetery together, Michael thought about the nature of revenge and justice. He'd returned to London, seeking the former, but had found something closer to the latter. Blackwood would pay for his crimes through the legal system Michael had once despaired of. The truth had been revealed. And most importantly, he had been given a second chance with his daughter. It wasn't a perfect ending. There were still difficult conversations ahead, wounds that might never fully heal. But it was a chance to build something new from the ashes of what had been destroyed. A chance to honor Katherine's memory not through vengeance, but through living the life she would have wanted for them. That night, as Emma slept in his spare room, her first overnight stay at his flat, Michael stood at the window, looking out at the London skyline. The city that had taken everything from him had, in its way, given it back. Not the same, not unmarked by time and pain, but real. Tangible. "We're going to be okay, Katherine," he whispered to the night. "I promise." And for the first time in 15 years, he believed it might be true. The courtroom was packed on the day of Richard Blackwood's sentencing. Michael sat in the gallery, Sarah beside him, Emma on his other side. They discussed whether Emma should attend, whether it would be too difficult, but she had insisted. "I need to see it end," she'd said. "For closure." Blackwood had aged dramatically in the months since his arrest. His designer suits had been replaced by prison attire, his confident swagger by a defeated shuffle. He barely glanced at the gallery as he was let in, but Michael knew he was aware of their presence. The judge's summary was damning. Richard Blackwood, you have been found guilty of the murder of Katherine Harrow, conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, witness intimidation, fraud, money laundering, and numerous other offenses. Your actions destroyed lives. You robbed a young child of her mother and conspired to deprive her of her father as well. You used your wealth and influence to corrupt the very systems designed to protect the public. Blackwood stared straight ahead, his expression blank. I sentence you to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 30 years. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Emma's hand tightened around Michael's. As Blackwood was led away, he finally turned toward them. For a brief moment, his eyes met Michael's, a look not of remorse but of bitter acknowledgement. He had lost. Justice, delayed but not denied, had finally been served. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Michael declined to speak, shielding Emma from the cameras as they made their way to the waiting car. Sarah handled the press with practiced efficiency, giving a brief statement on behalf of the family. It's really over, Emma said as they drove away. Yes, Michael agreed. It's over. But endings are also beginnings. In the months that followed, Michael and Emma continued to build their relationship. She graduated from university and decided to pursue a master's degree in London, moving into a small flat not far from Michael's. They established new traditions, Sunday dinners, museum visits, walks in the park where Michael had once pushed her on the swings as a toddler. Sarah became a more permanent fixture in their lives. Her relationship with Michael deepened, though both were careful not to rush. Emma, initially wary, grew to appreciate Sarah's straightforward nature and genuine care. On the anniversary of Katherine's death, they visited her grave together, Michael, Emma, and Sarah. They brought flowers and memories, sharing stories that made them laugh and cry. I think she would approve, Emma said as they walked away. Of us, of how things turned out. Michael looked at his daughter, no longer the little girl he'd lost, but a strong, compassionate woman who somehow carried the best of Katherine within her. He thought of the journey that had brought them here, of the darkness they'd emerged from, of the light they'd found. Yes, he said, I think she would. Revenge had been his motivation when he returned to London, a cold determination to make Blackwood pay for what he'd done. But somewhere along the way, that desire had transformed into something more meaningful. The pursuit of truth, of justice, of healing. In the end, the greatest revenge against those who had tried to destroy his family wasn't Blackwood's imprisonment or public disgrace. It was this, Michael and Emma, walking together in the sunshine, carrying Katherine's memory not as a burden of grief and anger, but as a legacy of love and resilience. They had survived. They had found each other again. And in doing so, they had reclaimed what had been stolen from them. Not the years lost, which could never be recovered, but the promise of a future together. That was a revenge sweeter than Michael could have imagined on that rainy night when he first returned to London, a man with nothing but memories and determination. Now he had something far more valuable, a second chance, and he intended to make the most of it. The end. If you enjoyed The Revenge, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more powerful storytelling experiences. Your support means everything and helps us continue creating content that moves and inspires. Leave a comment below with your thoughts. What was your favorite moment? Did the ending surprise you? We'd love to hear from you.